This is the Suunto Ocean. This is the Garmin Mk3i and the Apple Watch Ultra. Can the Suunto really beat these two dive computers? What the Suunto Ocean does is it's a dive computer, but it also has above water activities like the Garmin and the Apple Watch Ultra. But is the Suunto really worth for you to spend your money, or should you rather stick with one of these dive computers? Let's dive in. We've had the Suunto Ocean now for a few months, been doing side-by-side testing with the competitors of the Suunto Ocean, the Garmin Mk3i, the G1 from Garmin as well, the Apple Watch Ultra, some of the Shearwater dive computers that doesn't do any above water activities, but still, we do this to help you find the best dive computer that suits your needs. If you haven't seen it, we also have a full video that compares all of these dive computers, so check that one out. But in this video, we'll dive in a bit deeper into what the Suunto Ocean can actually do. We'll take a look at some of the test results we've gotten from this when we were comparing it to all the other dive computers. We'll talk about the usability, and we'll talk about the above water features much more in depth of how we've been using this and how you can use it as well. And then we'll of course go a bit more into details of what the Suunto Ocean can actually do. Right out of the box, the Suunto Ocean is relatively slim in the design, both in terms of size, but also in terms of looks. It has 3 buttons here on the side. Not the biggest profile, especially when I'm comparing that to the Mk3i. That kind of looks more like an action watch. That's the same if we compare that to the G1, I think. You can compare that a lot to the Apple Watch Ultra. That's also very much a designed watch, so where they think in the design a lot. And I do think that's a plus when it's something you need to be wearing above water as well or every day. Suunto Ocean stands out from all the other Suuntos, but also from a lot of the other dive computers like the Shearwaters that only does diving, all former and all the budget dive computers from Aqualung and Cressy and Maris and so on, that we've been known that does great within diving, but do nothing out of the water. And this is where Garmin started out by making a dive computer that can do all the sports activities with the Mark 1, and they've been continuing that up till the Mark 3 series. And Apple came in with the Apple Watch Ultra. That's not as much a sports watch, it's more a smartwatch, so it has a lot more smartwatch features, and then diving features with the Oceanic app. 3-button push, it has a select and an up and down button. What I'm missing here is actually a back button. That's more in terms of me. Been using the Mk3i that has the 5-button push. You get a bit more options for selecting, but Suunto went with a 3-button push, and you can navigate it, especially on above water. It's quite easy to get back because then you use the touchscreen. This one has a touchscreen, so it's easy to navigate as well using the touchscreen. While you're diving, of course, the touchscreen doesn't work, so it's more a 3-button navigation that you will be working on. Here at DIVEIN, we review a lot of dive gear, and we're going to be giving some of that away. We have masks, fins, dive computers, underwater scooters, and a bunch of other stuff. And right now, it's just sitting all lonely here at our warehouse. And dive gear deserves to be dived with, and you deserve new dive gear. So, at some point in this video, I'll let you know how you can get your hands on this and all the other things that we've been testing here at DIVEIN. Make sure you watch the whole video. Now let's get back to a review. Dive information on the screen. You got your depth, you got your time in water, your dive time, and then you have your NDL. And then down at the bottom here, we have a bottom menu that will show your navigation. It will show you temperature. It will show max depth on the dive. If you have a transmitter connected, you can get your air, you can get your remaining dive time compared to that air, so it will calculate what you have left. I'll show you the actual time of day, battery left, tank pressure, gas time left. That's the data you have. On the screen, you only have the 3 fixed, and then you flip through the menu, so you can't see the compass at the same time that you're seeing your air, or time of day while you're seeing the air. That's a flip through screen. Flipping through the screens, that's quite similar to what we know from the Oceanic app and also the Garmin, where you can set different settings of what you want to see. And the Suunto Ocean is much more simple in terms of that, because you can only see these 3 settings, where the Garmin Mk3i and the Shearwater, both turn and Tarek and so on, you can actually set the information you want to see. This one is much more, you could actually argue, a bit more recreational dive focused, so a lot less customizable than both Mk3i and all the Shearwaters, and much more just plug and play kind of view. It's easy to set up, it's easy to go in. The setting menu is really intuitive and easy to do. Connecting a tank pod is really straightforward, but customizing it is not an option at all. And flipping through this menu kind of gives you a lack of some of the dive data that I would like to see when I'm wearing a tank pod or a transmitter on my tank. I'd like to see my remaining air constantly. And I know a lot of divers are diving without a second SPG, and therefore it's the only way of knowing how much air you have left. So having that information on the screen all the time, I think is a really big plus. So it's waterproof down to 330 feet, 100 meters, but it's only depth rated, so it only gives you dive information to 169 feet, 60 meters. That's again coming into this recreational dive mode, similar to the Apple Watch Ultra, that's for 40 meters. And comparing that to the Mk3i, that's much, much deeper to 200 meters. This one is catered much more in terms of the recreational diver that doesn't need to go that much into tech diving. But if you do want to go a bit beyond the 40 meters, you can still do that and still get that extra depth. When the Apple Watch came out, a lot of divers were stressed out or not happy with the 40-meter limit, and this is what Suunto is pushing it a bit further. You could argue that most divers are well within both 40 meters, but also if they are touching into the technical, won't go beyond 60 meters anyway. And if you do consider that, then there are other dive computers. That would be the Garmin's, look at that, or the Shearwater or other tech dive computers if you are going to be venturing deeper than that. You can connect up to 5 transmitters. Dive modes, we have air nitrite gauge and free diving. There is pressure sensors, there's temperature sensors, so you get all that data. There's also an altimeter, which means it measures how high you are, which works if you're doing altitude diving. It's running on the Garmin 16C algorithm with gradient factors. So you are using a safe and known algorithm that gives you plenty of time. And with the gradient factors, you can modify that if you want to do deep stops and so on. If you don't know how to use the algorithms, always just leave it as it is. This is much more for the divers who know what they're doing or have been venturing into algorithms or technical diving. They know how to set their algorithms, and then they can work that into making their own preferences. Using the Garmin 16C algorithm is the standard that a lot of the dive computers are using, and especially a lot of the technical dive computers, meaning that it's a good and safe dive computer that you are good to use. And it gives you a nice profile in terms of dive time. You don't end your dives before everybody else, because mainly everybody else will be using that same dive algorithm. It also has a routes in, so you get your GPS spots when you dive in and GPS spots when you dive out. And then it has a 3D map profile that I can actually create on your dive app. So you can get a really good sense of where you were diving. This is for locking it into the app. Locks a lot of the data in for this dive computer. That works really well. You can see all this data, where you went in, where you went out, and that whole dive profile you get as well. This is again what we know from the Oceanic app and from the Mk3i, but it works really well. The Suunto app is really simple. It doesn't give as much information, I think, as the Mk3i, the Garmin app, the Garmin Dive app, but it's more intuitive and it's easier for recreational divers, I think, to use. Again, with a bit less information. Ocean has, in our test, the best screen. It's a 1.43-inch AMO LED screen, which just means it's super bright. And testing it side by side with all the other ones, it came in so clear and crisp, really easy to see in all the different scenarios we put it through. You can also adjust the lighting quite easily, actually, with a push of a button. So if you go into dark places and it's lighting up too much and actually destroying your night vision or your dark water vision, you can turn it down, and then you can easily turn it up as well. Now, coming into our test results, in this one, as we did with all the other dive computers, we tested battery life and usability, and looking at that, the battery life of this one came into 50 hours, brand new. Suunto is saying between 40 and 60 hours on it. In the test we did, which is it's a simulated dive in a dive chamber, and getting 50 hours, that's more than you'll need for multiple days of diving anyway, so that's fair and good. Still a bit less than what they say is the max. And coming in, comparing that to the Apple Watch Ultra, I think that one got 12 hours, and the Garmin Mk3i completely destroyed that test with 173 hours and still coming out with battery left. So between the three, this is kind of like the middle part. 50 hours is plenty. Above water, we do get plenty. We don't have to charge it that often. You know, between 2 or 3 weeks, you need to charge it depending on how much you use it for sports activities and so on, how much the GPS is tracking. Comparing that to the Apple Watch Ultra, you need to charge that every second day or so. Garmin get 3 to 4 weeks as well. So a good battery life in between the two. And comparing that to all other dive computers on the market that you're not using above water, battery life is not as important as this one, because this one you will be wearing to and from the dive site. You'll be wearing it on the days before diving as well, and then it's nice to have enough battery to go diving without having to worry about it. Now we're at that point in this video where you have a chance to win some of the dive gear that we've been testing here at DIVEIN. First off, like the video so you see more of our videos, and subscribe to the channel. That way we can keep making these videos and you can make sure you see them as well in your feed. Next up, in the description, there's a link to the newsletter. Sign up for that one, because that's how you'll know if you're the winner we pick. Lastly, in the comment section, tell us which of these 5 computers you would pick and why. Now let's get back to the video. So for sports activities or the above water activities, which is why you'll be getting the Suunto Ocean, is to use this dive computer above land as well. It has 95 sports activities ranging from running, swimming, skiing, boxing, anything you can kind of think of. This one it can do. It's less than the Mk3i, more than the G1, but all in all of these dive computers, all of these sports activity watches can do almost any sports. If you can't actually find the sport that you're doing, you can just find a relatable one where it still tracks the same activities. If you're trail running or running outside, that's kind of the same metrics that it will be tracking. So it basically tracks any activity you could think about, indoor and outdoor as well. It tracks your heart rate, the GPS activity, blood oxygen level, and then it tracks your sleep quality as well with this heart rate. So you get a sleep data of how well you slept. There is, in terms of the blood oxygen level, we have experienced, and I've seen other people on the internet experiencing, a way too low reading on this one. So that's an error that's been in the Suunto Ocean. So don't count on that one giving you correct data. I think it was covering us down to 89%, which is, from what I can understand, quite critical. If you have that, and you should be admitted to the hospital straight away. So, and other dive computers, other computers for sports tracking activities didn't measure that on any of us. So that's an issue in that tracking data that you're getting. But heart rate and so on has been similar in terms of what we were getting readings of as the other ones. So focusing in on this every day is where we can also compare to the dive computers I chose to pick in this video. And the reason why I've chosen both the Mk3i, the Apple Watch, and to compare that to the Suunto Ocean is because they can do a lot of the other things out of the water. And in that everyday standard, so Garmin has the Garmin Pay, so you can pay for groceries. Apple has Apple Pay, you can pay for. Suunto doesn't have that option. So paying in supermarket, you still need to use your credit card or cash, of course. These activities, they're doing that really well. I think Suunto is just as good as the Garmin Mk3i. You get a bit more data with the Garmin. You get the same tracking with the Suunto Ocean. You just get a bit less data. Still, for most outdoor persons or most active persons, more than enough. With the Apple Watch Ultra, you get a bit less data. You can do the same sports features, but you do get less data than you do with both of the other ones. So this is much more a smartwatch. On that hand, like this, the Apple Watch Ultra can do calls and reply messages, and you can talk to Siri, and you can get all these things in the Apple Watch that you don't have both with the Suunto Ocean or the Mk3i. So this is really where they are separated in terms of what they can do above water. Getting all of this health data and sleep data, I think that's really nice. All of them does that, and you can really use that as well to see how well rested you are, and also keep up your activity in terms of being pushed a bit to keeping your activity high enough. In terms of diving and the conclusion of it, where the Suunto Ocean stands apart, this one drawback I think is quite crucial to this dive computer, and that's the compass of it. When you look at that, it gives a compass reading within the numbers. So it gives you a reading of 180 or 182 when you're turning it a bit, and that's it. Whereas both for the Mk3i, for the Apple Watch Ultra, and for all the Shearwater and all the other dive computers we tested with a compass, they actually gave you much more. They give you the actual graphic compass where you can see my heading, which kind of helps me, at least when I'm navigating, that I can see how the compass is moving like you would with a traditional compass as well. And then you can mark a heading. So before I go in on dive, I will mark in the heading of wherever we're going, and I'll use that whenever I need to navigate, because I won't be able to remember that. Whereas, because that's not possible with the Suunto Ocean, whenever you're going in for a dive, you need to take up your compass, mark the heading, and then remember that throughout the dive. Okay, so the heading was 180, that's the dive side, and then I have to remember what the return heading is. Whereas with the other ones, you can actually mark the heading. With the Mk3i, you can even mark a reciprocal heading as well. So you, in that setting, to say, okay, I'm at the dive site, I want to go back, click that in, reciprocal heading, and then your new marking is on the way back as well. I think that's much better in the compass. And the irony in that Suunto, being a company that's been making great compasses for forever, is actually making the worst built-in dive compass that I've tested so far, is a bit ironic. Now, if you don't use the dive compass that much, well, then don't consider that an issue, but I do see that as a bit of a drawback compared to the other dive computers. And then coming into who should buy it, I think it's a really nice dive computer for recreational divers. And pointing out recreational divers, limit is 40 meters, even though this one can go to 60 meters. Because of the lack of customizable options in the dive computer, I wouldn't recommend this for dive or technical divers. I would rather recommend options like the Mk3i, the Shearwater Tarek, or Perdix 2, or in that genre where you get a dedicated technical dive computer, and keeping the Suunto Ocean as a recreational dive computer. It's great for people diving often or people diving not so often, that we still have a dive computer you can use for other things and then use for diving. So very comparable to the Apple Watch Ultra, a great everyday watch that you can use for diving. And with the Suunto Ocean, you don't have that subscription. The price is a bit higher than the Apple Watch Ultra, so you're kind of wearing that in. It's a really nice quality dive computer. It looks well. It gives you all the data you need, but there is a few drawbacks that you need to consider before making the purchase decision. Price-wise, it's still a lot cheaper than the Mk3i. It's a much nicer looking than, I would say, the G1 is. That's in my opinion. That's a cheaper option from Garmin. I have a review of that one. You can check that out if you want to compare that side by side. G1 can do a bit more, but is limited in terms of not being able to do transmitters. I think that was covering the Suunto Ocean all the way around. If you have any questions or comments, drop them down below in the comment section as well, and I'll get back to you if it's about the Suunto Ocean. Also, check out the full in-depth review of all the dive computers. I'll link that up in the description below. I'm Tom from DIVEIN, and this is the Suunto Ocean.